And good evening, and I'd like to turn the program over to the president of the CCCBA ADR section, Palvir Shoker.
Thank you, Anne. And I guess we didn't record Mark LeHockey's animal balloon making ideas, but thank you everyone for joining us today. I know tomorrow or in a few hours we'll be glued to the TV soon. So I really appreciate that everybody is here today and joining us. As Anne said, my name is Palvir Shoker. I'm the chair for the ADR section of CCCBA. You know, last year as individuals and as a community, we had to hit pause and take stock of where we are as a society. And as a board, we acknowledge that we have to address the lack of diversity in our ADR sector. And we have to take concrete actions now if we want to see any meaningful change in the coming years. And as usual, Mark LeHockey stepped up right away and he pivoted his Pathways to Mediation program to address this need to increase diversity. And when we say diversity, we don't just mean racial diversity. We mean diversity in every sense of the word, whether it's gender, nationality, area of practice, big firm, solo practitioner, government, or private interest. And we're very fortunate and grateful that Alameda County Bar Association and Contra Costa Women's Association answered our call to reach a wider audience. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Because you know, we can come up with great ideas on our own, but if we don't have participation from all the players, it doesn't make that big of an impact. So we truly appreciate your help. The purpose of our first session is to lift the curtain on mediation career, so we can add new and diverse individuals to our field. We want to show that ADR career is accessible to everyone. We all know that if you are a retired judge, it's easy for you to be a mediator, but we want to show that not just retired judges, but everybody has access to this field. Our panel will show that there is more than one path to get here. And obviously we are doing our follow-up sessions, and those will focus more on the nitty-gritty and showcase different providers, etc. So without taking any more time, I'll turn it over to Mark so we can kick off today's session. And again, thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Palvir. And we're going to do a little bit unconventional kickoff. You see four of us, the wonderful Judge Joscelyn Jones, Shirish, Gupta, Palvir Shoker, and I. And we're going to do some self-introductions in a few minutes. But before we get to that, we want to find out a little bit more about you. And even before that, I want to just second Palvir's comment. We have many goals for today, and one is to broaden people's perspective about the value of having mediation training. It's not just about I want to be a mediator, and we'll get back to that. But in terms of broadening the ADR community, it's obviously something that a lot of us have been talking about for a long period of time. And we're hoping tonight is one of those efforts to start to kick things off to make some positive changes and to build this over time. We'll talk more about follow-ups to that. I just want to make one other comment about the issue of diversity. The one topic or one category I don't think Palvir mentioned is age. And I think there's tremendous opportunity for people that are not just old like me to think about the field and learn the skills and start practicing them earlier and even getting into the field earlier. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do the self-introductions and we explain our respective paths to mediation, which is designed, among other things, to help people think more broadly about there's many ways to get into the field. We thought we'd ask some questions about you folks. So I think, Anne, we have some polling questions. We're going to post those, ask everybody to respond to them, and then we'll call the date. It's all anonymous, by the way, but here we go. So there are in total going to be 4 questions.
It's Mark. I don't think it's anonymous, but
oh, it's not. Okay. Well,
but I don't think.
Do we still have that question about their credit card number?
No, I took that one out, so I think we're good.
Then no privacy violations.
Okay, good. All right.
So please take a minute, and if you would, I think it is turned on, right, Ian?
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's
Then-
on.
Good.
And I'll let you know.
And I see on my screen 2 of the 4 questions.
If you scroll down, Mark, you'll see the
okay,
rest.
Scroll.
good. All right, terrific.
And while people are looking at the poll questions, we do encourage everybody to ask questions, but please post those questions in the Q&A section so we can keep an eye on those. I'm not saying for everybody, but personally for me, chat function usually gets away from me because, the conversations can carry on. So please, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A and one of us will spot it and we'll throw the question out as we progress.
Great. So we wait another minute here. It looks like people response is still coming in. Roughly 40 out of 87 people, I guess, are here with us.
Yep.
And Ann, while people are filling that out as well, I know the program is being recorded. Will the recording be available for anybody who missed today or want to go back and review it?
Yes, it'll be available on our website within a couple of weeks.
Excellent, excellent.
So yeah, so people who register for the June program who missed today's program can go back and watch today's program before the June program.
Right. Terrific.
And then they'll know to expect balloon animals. Okay, sorry. Enough of the balloon animals.
Okay. All right.
So we're at 60 of 87, 68% voted. We still have anybody coming in. We might be done.
And can you see a question? I don't know if we're all seeing it. This one's from Michael Kent. I work primarily as mediator, so questions 3 and 4 do not apply to me, but it will not let me submit without answering all questions.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't have any answer.
We don't have an other, so if it's
Next time we'll have another for sure.
put down never, maybe,
Okay.
or after 10 years, or
Okay. So I think we've gotten a number of responses here.
okay,
Palvir,
they're still coming in.
still coming in? Okay. And it looks like we have a couple of people with some audio issues.
Audio, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that at the end of the day, the feedback to our questions is something that we'd like, but we're happy to continue.
Okay. Okay. So
rather
do you
than
want,
wait
I'll
too
end
long.
the poll and
Yep.
and we'll take our numbers from there. Okay.
Good.
And let's see, share results.
Great. I can see them. Thank you. So we have a mixture of people in terms of background, some that have not been trained or served yet as a mediator, and I'm excited about that, as well as people that have been meeting for a number of years, and some that have been trained but have not yet gotten too many at bats in mediation. Also something we want to talk about, more opportunities for those at bats. A mixture of training programs that people have gone through. And it appears in terms of background, heavily weighted towards people that are otherwise in private practice, but we do have some people that are in-house legal, corporate legal positions, educational positions, law students, I hope some of mine. So that's very interesting. Let's see, if you're not serving primary as mediator, when do you see yourself? In 1 to 5 years. That's interesting. So a number of people are joining us, or at least if they're not already in the biz or thinking about it in the next 5 years, and that's excellent. So I think we can turn off the sharing for now, but that's great background. So just trying to close that up screen. Bear with me, folks. There we go.
Shirish knows everybody.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, all his family members are here. That's why we're doing this.
I was raising money for the Contra Costa Bar Association.
Oh, okay.
In that case,
Did
Shirish,
you-
great job.
Yeah. The only problem is the program is free, Shirish. So anyway,
Voluntary donations.
all right. So thank you for that background and really appreciate the feedback so far. And again, keep questions flowing as we're going. We may save some for later. If we deal with any in real time, that is terrific. So perhaps we could turn to just some self description, not just who you are and what you're doing, but your connection to ADR and how you got there. And Shirish, I know you and I have been through this a couple of other times, so I'm going to call on you first, and the pressure's on.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you to the Contra Costa County Bar Association for inviting me to speak today. In terms of my path towards ADR, since some of you have seen me speak before, you know the story of I was practicing at big law firms, then went on my own. And one day I saw an email from the San Francisco, the Bar Association of San Francisco and the South Asian Bar Association saying that there was a training coming up to become a mediator. And there was a discount, you know, the magic words. So I thought, yeah, why not? Let's, I talked to my wife. She said it was okay that I spent 5 Saturdays in the summer in San Francisco. We had really young kids at the time. So I went there, got trained, learned a lot, and then hung out my shingle and tried to market myself as a mediator while I was still practicing. And it took me a year to get my first mediation. And then since then, just building the practice. And about 5.5 years ago, I gave up the practice of law and joined CHAMS to be a full-time mediator and arbitrator. And that's what I do now. It's been a fun path.
We're going to come back to everybody who's going to tell sort of more detail. What did they do, their programs, learning, and that. But thank you for that. Palvir, do you want to do? We're going to save the best for last. Dan already mentioned to all of us, Judge Jones. So Palvir, do you mind going next?
Sure. Well, I was doing solo practitioner. I had a small practice in San Francisco, doing personal injury and employment cases. And, you know, when we had our second child and the fees in San Francisco schools were just crazy for even kindergarten, we thought it's time to leave. We moved to Contra Costa County and I took a year off saying, I closed my practice, I'm going to take a year off, and then I'll open a practice here in Contra Costa. And during that time, I also got an email about a mediation training. So I said, wait a minute, I need to get my MCLE credits done because I think it was my section, you know, the 3rd section term that time. So, and mediation always had an interest for me because as an advocate, I had gone to mediations and I always thought this is the easiest job in the world. They already have my money, whether I settle or not, they're gonna get paid. So, you know, but I never thought I would pursue this as a career. I went to the mediation training, really, really, really enjoyed it. At the end, the provider said, you know, Contra Costa has a volunteer organization. Why don't you give them a call? So I called the organization. I said, I want to volunteer. And they allowed me to volunteer once a week, you know, a couple of hours a week. And that was 6 years ago. I never left. And now I do mediations full time and I'm loving every second of it.
I was afraid it was something we said, Shirish. You seemed to disappear there for a minute.
It's a way for me to preserve my bandwidth.
Okay. Judge Jones, you have a different path to what I'll say a path in terms of the ADR community. Most of the people we meet in our mediation world that are judges are people that are either sitting currently or former judges who then go into mediation, but your path is different. I'd love to have you share it. And obviously I'd like to hear more, as we were talking before we officially got started, about the unique aspect of today.
Okay. Yes. Hello, everyone. I am so profoundly grateful to be part of this. I shared a little bit. I'm a little emotional today, because I find that we are wedged between remembering Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday yesterday and what he spent his life committed to in terms of social change, racial justice, but really bringing people together. And then tomorrow, where we'll have the first African-American East Indian vice president, female as vice president. And so I was moved today because of all days, I don't even know how we came up with this date, we are wedged between two very profound days. And I believe that is also very indicative of what mediation is. Yesterday was the remembrance of what was. Tomorrow is the day of what will be. And what mediation really is about is helping people who've been dealing with what was to move towards what they want things to be in the next day. So I will just briefly say that it's very special for me to be here today and on this date. But my road to mediation, probably like many other, well, I'll say probably every African-American attorney I ever knew or African-American person thought mediation was exclusively a world for people who came from big law firms and went into mediation or were judges. And that meant mostly white males, by and large white males. And so then it never was an aspiration to be a mediator. I certainly came into the law profession with a social work kind of mindset to help people. My first 10 years of life in public service, primarily as a public defender and working in legal aid, I thought if I, who came from South Central, single parent home, African-American, who had experienced many of the kind of things that my clients experienced, if because I could understand their life, that as an advocate, an attorney, I could help the other side understand and we could come to a resolution. I found that not to be true. The system isn't designed for one advocate to sort of persuade another advocate in that way. And so in my private practice, I was court appointed to represent minors and conservatees, and often, definitely with the guardianship the guardians representing the minors, we always went to mediation. And that's where I saw the miracle of mediation. And mediation is a miracle because of the people who have the capacity to help people come to both see the power in coming to their own agreement. And so I saw that, I participated as again, as a representative, and another very exceptional mediator, white male, said, hey, you would be good. And I then took training. I took 40 hours of training with International Dialogue for Peaceful Change. They are the mediators, the persons who help negotiate the resolution with the Northern Ireland conflict. And so that was very powerful. And then I took community mediation training and did mediations. And primarily my work came out of my practice, both whether I was court appointed or been retained. So then I would also represent parties who were trustees, administrators, executors. So that's how I came to mediation. And now I'm a judge for the last a little over 6 months. And I use mediation both. We have day of mediators, and I advocate for parties to go to mediation. And I'm assigned to small claims and civil harassment. So the preponderance, the majority of the parties are self-represented litigants. I actually utilize my mediation skills when I've actually heard a trial, but don't want to render a judgment. And I help people come to understand the benefits of their not having a judgment and come to agreement. And I also have worked since my appointment when our calendars have been really heavy, and another one of the judges will email and I'll go sit in a private chat room and mediate a case, just like a mediator. So that's how I come to mediation. I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you. I will come back to many of the subparts that we're already, each of us are starting to raise. I'll just close the loop. Besides the balloon animal making, I got into mediation completely accidentally a little bit over 20 years ago, minding my own business, doing a civil litigation practice, not for a big firm. Actually for a small one. And one day got a call out of the blue from the now retired magistrate judge Wayne Brazil, who was running the federal court program. And I must have been a quiet day, he couldn't find anybody else to call, and asked me if I would devote some time to serve as a mediator as part of their program. And truthfully, at the time, I thought, well, that's a nice thing to be asked, and you don't say no to judges, and so you go and do it. And didn't think there was much, more than the nice pro bono give back. But OMG, in comparison to being using mediation purely as a litigator, representing plaintiffs or defendants, it's really eye-opening to sit in the middle chair in a way that I didn't really think about beforehand, but you see things differently. And not only, I'll build more on that later on in the program, but I kept doing the pro bono work, went in-house as general counsel for about 12 years and kept doing the work, partly for the pro bono aspect, but partly I was just getting so much out of it. And again, we'll circle back to that. So it's been a little bit over 20 years, and like I said, it's changed my life, but more to that. But so let's talk, I know, Judge, you mentioned a specific training program, and I wanted to flesh that out a little bit more. Palvir, I'd like to hear about the program you're affiliated with. Shirish, did you share with the group so far, where you took any training per se, or has it been like an evolving process over time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first was the BASF training that it was Ron Kelly's training. And many folks know Ron Kelly. He does trainings through Berkeley Extension, I think, as well. And in that process, I was exposed to several mediators. And then over time, I've taken multiple trainings through court programs, bar associations, private agencies, eventually through the AAA and their Higginbotham Fellowship. And then the fun part is now I get to do the trainings. So
excellent. Scary too, a little bit.
It is.
That's when my old law school asked me to come teach them. I thought, oh my God, don't you have better people? Come on. Palvir, so you're part of a program, and I'm not sure most of the people have probably heard much about it. And I think it's a great place to kick off different places to learn.
Before I get into what I do currently, I also want, especially law students and newer attorneys, the four of us talked about how we ended up in this career. And most of you are going to think, oh, it was very accidental and it happened and you were just at the right time, at the right place type of situation. That's why we are doing this program, because I want this to be intentional for you guys, that you're here collecting information so you can make a decision, and not like me, that you just went with the flow. So that's part of the reason that we're doing this. So currently, amongst one of my roles, I am the court mediation program director for a nonprofit here in Contra Costa County called Congress of Neutrals. Congress of Neutrals was started many years ago, about 22 years ago. We provide free mediation in small claims, civil harassment, and eviction cases.
Oh, she froze.
She's just thinking really hard. I think it looks like her screen has frozen. We'll wait a moment. Palvir, I hope you can reconnect.
It's the same issue I was getting too. That's why I had to kept turning off my video.
Yeah. It's sometimes worst case, you log out and log back in, but we'll wait a second.
I'm just glad I had my first class this morning, and for 3 hours Zoom was okay. So that was perfect.
I think anybody who's using Zoom for the neutral work or for teaching, you have to just be willing to adapt.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, we lost her, and hopefully she'll dial back in.
Yeah.
Um, and so maybe while we're doing that, we were talking a little bit about what we're currently doing, how we got started. An area I really want to share with the group is, at least my view, is the fact that mediation training isn't just about learning how to be a mediator. I think it actually, for me personally, was sort of transformative about thinking about work. But before I give you my 2 cents, Shirish, I know you were, when you got into the area, you were still practicing and did that for quite a while. So let me ask you the question: where did the training impact your day job, so to speak?
Absolutely, because the skill set you learn to be in the mediator's chair is a skill set you can use in life. It's a lot of it's just the listening. So the active listening skills are things that I do to this day in family relationships and personal relationships and in professional ones too. So that's been invaluable. And then information about ethics, for example, that apply, the ethical considerations that mediators have to abide by or think about. That's made me think about, when I, as a lawyer, am using a mediator, what is it that the mediator can and cannot do? What can I say to the mediator? Is it okay to lie to my mediator? Short answer, yes, because mediation is a confidential setting, and there are evidentiary codes that prevent the disclosure of things that happen in a mediation. And there you go. There's the ethics credit. We had the case of Cassell, and which has not been overturned, and it's been the law in California for years. And you're seeing it in other states as well, where people are trying to get information that was disclosed in a mediation. You try to get that admitted in a later proceeding, either against your attorney or to get out of a deal. And courts routinely say, that happened in a mediation, we can't consider it. But with the one caveat that it's an evidentiary rule. So that can be waived. So remember that if you want to make sure that what happened in the mediation does not get disclosed, you must object. Because otherwise courts will allow it because you didn't object.
Palvir, we missed you. And
Yes.
you were midway through your description. And so we did a little bit of a tangent. And to a question I want to get back to with everybody, including you, which is the impact of mediation training more broadly. Shirish was just giving his take on that. Would you like to complete the conversation about what you're doing in the Congress of Neutral, and then we can throw the same question at you?
Sure. And apologize, I don't know what happened all day. We were worried that with the wind, we're going to lose power, and something happened. So I think I might have jinxed it, saying everything is great. Going back to Congress of Neutrals, I was talking about their MMP program, their mediation mentorship program. And the way the program is set up is somebody brand new who has done the 40-hour program comes in. They sign up for this session. It's a 6-session program. The first 2 sessions, they will observe a mediate a case in court. The next 2 sessions, they will co-mediate with that mediator trainer. And then the last 2 mediations, the new person will mediate and they will be given feedback. So this is how I got started. I came in, I really enjoyed mediating, and then they said, if you want to volunteer, we can give you a day, Wednesday morning small claims calendar or something like that. And I said, great. And I just started with that. It was easy to do because it was blocked off in my calendar. I knew that's where I'm going to be for 2 hours. So it wasn't a huge commitment. But then I saw the impact it was making on people that are walking through that door, because these are self-represented parties. That really opened my eyes, because I felt like we were living in a bubble, being in the Bay Area, being around tech companies and bankers and all of that. We're talking huge numbers all the time. In legal field, we fighting over huge sums all the time. Here in small claims, somebody's being impacted over $500. Somebody is going to get evicted over $300 back rent. And they're coming in scared, and both sides, not just, the plaintiff, defendants as well, both sides. And then my work there, I saw immediate results. Whereas in private practice and litigation, you can sit on the file for 3 years and still don't have that satisfaction. You settle the case or you win the case, you enjoy it for 10 minutes and then on to the next one. But here it was immediate satisfaction that, in fact, in one of the mediations, the plaintiff got up and she gave me a hug. Then it was awkward that, hey, I'm a mediator. So then I went around and gave everybody hugs, and that was pre-COVID. So that's what pulled me in. So there are organizations here in Contra Costa, in every county. There's another organization here, Center for Human Development. They do volunteer mediation with elder abuse cases, with juveniles. So there are many ways to practice the skill set. I know many of the participants I notice I know that they've done the 40-hour training and then they've never done anything. So this is a way to just kind of make sure that your skills are up to date and you actually practicing it. And I promise you, you're gonna love it. I'm not trying to sell our program, but any mediation. So if you think you're not gonna be mediated today, don't worry about it, but just go there and try it.
Thanks, Palvir. So, and we did I hope by now everyone's received electronically a very brief outline, which lists, among other things, some organizations, including Congress of Neutrals. That, of course, is the top of the list. No, but seriously, there are several that we've added to the outline. It is only scratching the surface. There's no doubt there's many more similar community-based organizations, and obviously a host of private organizations for training, for profit, whatever. So please take a look at that. But again, just understanding it is just scratching the surface. Judge Jones, you mentioned your training that you did. And question is, how did you find your way to even go there as opposed to Congress of Neutrals or BASF? I'm always curious about how people pick the places they go to learn, given there's lots of places to choose from.
So let me just shout out to the Congress of Neutrals, because I pro-temmed for 19 years in Contra Costa in the unlawful detainer, civil harassment, domestic violence, small claims. And we thank God every day Congress of Neutrals was there. The calendars are just too long to do everything. So I'm not going to get away from the question, but I did want to shout out to that. And then also, I must shout out Alameda County Bar has Emerita Alvarado is the coordinator. They have a day of mediation service. Again, couldn't make it through my self-represented calendars without them. But two things. There's some dear friends of mine, Emerald Consulting Group, who were doing in Antioch, California, we're doing a lot of work with the Antioch police and the local youth in school, the Antioch schools, the police, in terms of the racial issues that had emerged in that part of Eastern Contra Costa. And so they had developed a program where they had sort of mediator buddies to help facilitate in that sort of restorative justice mediation process they had. And so they brought in the International Dialogue for Peaceful Change, because they were people they had relations with. They had gone to Northern Ireland and had watched them and gotten trained there to implement the same kind of program in Eastern Contra Costa. So when I came on board with that program, I went through that train. That's how I became familiar with the International Dialogue for Peaceful Change program. I did the conflict resolution and training community mediation. That was through the Center for Human Development, because I was participating in a lot of mediations through conservatorship, through guardianships. And so I took their training and became on the roles of one of their mediators.
Great. And so the question I gave to Shirish and Palvir, if I follow up with you, Judge Jones, obviously you started to do the training before, obviously you went to the bench. But did you find, as we were talking about before, that the training had a broader benefit to you in terms of what you were doing, besides just the possibility of working as a mediator?
Is that for me? I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. Absolutely. I was marking and co-signing what Palvir and Shirish have already said. The first thing, obviously, is it is a skill set that's transferable for everything in your life, in your professional life and your personal life. Clearly, active listening. And as lawyers, I'm just going to share this little story. Before I was when I came out of basically civil, doing legal services work, and then I became a public defender. And so one day, in 1 week from my entry into the public defender's office, I was in a trial. And two of the supervisors came and watched me, and they're like, "Why don't you object, Joscelyn?" And I said, "It's just so rude to object." They were leading and everything. And so 8.5 years later as a public defender, I'm so beyond rude. Just, the training of litigation, it's quick, it's interruptive, it's disruptive, it's a lot of things, but it's not about being patient and attending and hearing and then acknowledging. So the skill sets automatically were helpful in reminding me again. I probably utilize those kind of skill sets with my clients, but this reminded me about how important it was to come to settlement, both as a lawyer and now as a judge. People want to be heard, they want to be seen, and they want to know that you understand. And the power of looking like them and coming from experiences like them helps them take the leap to trust you, to take them into this process that's also foreign to them. They see enough on TV, Judge Judy or Law and Order, or all these different kind of law shows, and so they're used to, that's my day in court. I get to stand up and say what I'm going to say, and da da da. Mediation is not been. They don't see it the same way. They're more familiar with these other methods in the law. And so when you say to people, and I'm going to say this, which is why it's so necessary to have people multilingual, I had a Tamir interpreter translating, and Tamir is a language that comes out of, East Indian, is it East Indian? I think.
Tamil, yes.
Yeah. And dialects, so it's the language, it's the dialects, it's understanding, because when people come from cultural experiences and legal experiences so different from this, when you're inviting them both to participate, they can grasp sort of the American court system, but mediation is this foreign thing. Am I giving up something? Am I going to lose something? Is someone going to take advantage of me? And so the power of people who come from multi-ethnic cultural experiences and understanding language helps them trust that this is a safe place, and that they will be heard, because people also come from legal systems where people are not heard at all. You know what I mean? There's a lot of implications in terms of mediators understanding. Maybe you don't understand all those details, but what mediation affords people in another deeper cultural level is an experience more akin to what culturally they're accustomed to, that people will come and reason together. There's community elders and leaders who bring people together. And so we who are the mediators, if we can look and talk and understand and identify that, then it will feel familiar to parties who come in to take advantage of this and come to, and help see if they can bring resolution into their conflict.
I appreciate that comment, and it fits with what I was trying to reference earlier, which is I think some of the best work we do as neutrals is trying to figure out what the heck's going on.
Mhm.
And I don't mean most of the time the pure law school driven,
Mhm.
here's the merits of the case, we're right, they're wrong. Obviously, the merits make a difference in all the calculations, but it seems like sometimes the hardest part of what we're doing is figuring out what's going on in the background. And it may be cultural issues, it may be organizational issues, whether you're dealing with an individual, a very large organization with multiple levels and constituents and things.
Mhm.
But I find one of our biggest challenges sometimes just figuring out what no one's telling us in the mediation briefs they give us, if they give us briefs at all. And that pause that we hopefully can do to just say, let me figure out why you're seeing it so differently.
Mhm.
It's not an issue that there's necessarily right or wrong, it's a perception issue.
Mhm.
That to me was the big aha moment.
Mhm.
And again, using this process both as a litigator, but also as a client for years, I became a true believer because we started to use this process early on just to understand what the other side's seeing differently. And it just was remarkable because sometimes there was just misunderstandings, and the misunderstandings float up, and then there's an opportunity to figure out what they missed, what we missed, and get things done. And that's kind of gone away, unfortunately, with my view of sort of last generation of lawyers that I am part of. How we learn to be lawyers has been much more litigious
Mhm.
and less conversation. And so I think we learn from doing that. Now, Shirish, I know from your experience, I know to me, one of my great trainings, besides the great training I got from the Northern District of California, was just getting to a lot of mediations and being there, whether you're an advocate or a client. I mean, I assume you've learned from good and maybe less good examples from just being there and showing up. I mean, what was that experience like for you as a learning tool?
There's no substitute for being in the seat. I mean, that at the end of the day, you can go to all the trainings you want, you can shadow people, but until that responsibility is foisted on you and everyone's looking at you as the mediator, it's just not the same. The funny part is, I remember in Ron's training, it's been over a decade, but I still remember this. In Ron's training, he had this checklist. So when you do that initial session or the opening, you have your checklist of things. And so when I started as a mediator, I had that checklist, and I kind of thought of it as there's a surgeon turned writer, Atul Gawande, who writes about how surgeons make mistakes, and it's because they skip things that are very basic. And so he's saying one of the ways to avoid those errors is by having checklists. So that and pilots do this all the time. You got to go through the checklist to make sure that you've covered everything. So when I started a mediation practice, I had that checklist I talk about, okay, what's my role? What's confidentiality? Where are the bathrooms? When's lunch coming in? Just ground rules that I've read the briefs. Thank you for them. And I had probably like 20 things in my checklist. And it was useful for me because I was learning how to do the job. And a checklist was a quick way for me to not actively think about the things I didn't need to worry about. So it was, these are things I will cover. And then I will do the active listening and focus on the people in front of me. And so it's something you have there while you're getting comfortable with that skin or that role, or Judge Jones, the rope. And now I don't use the checklist. I don't even do the intro anymore. We just jump into it. But the comfort level I have now versus the comfort level I had then, and I'm sure just the presence in the room is different. So when you're starting out, having tools like that some type of checklist or reminder of, this is how the process is, or having a sample settlement agreement that you give the parties at the beginning of the day. Tools like that can make it easier for you to learn how to be a mediator without telling the people that you're in front of that you're learning how to be a mediator.
Right.
That's those great examples. So, Palvir, as you're going forward in mediations, are you working with checklists, and how do you prepare yourself to dive into these matters?
In the court mediations, we don't have the luxury. We don't even have a brief. We have two very, very angry individuals that we start working with. So you learn by being thrown in the fire, and you learn very quickly. And that's where your people skills really come in handy. That, we don't have, the checklist that Shirish talked about, the introduction and all of that. Yes, you still do that, but you have to do it in layman's terms. You cannot use legal terms that in private mediations with two attorneys, you can use that language. But now you have to translate that into language that somebody who has no legal training, this is the first time they come into court, use those words. And I also want to kind of take this moment to again address law students and new attorneys, and I'm keeping my eye out for you guys, because when we're talking about how to become a mediator and all of that, yes, we expect you to become a mediator, and I'm going to stalk you for the coming months to make sure that you're on that path. But at the same time, the mediation training is going to help you in your career as an attorney as well as a litigator. Just an example, 6 months or so after I finished my mediation training, I still had some cases that I just couldn't get rid of when I was shutting down my practice. They were trailing. These were clients that either only spoke Punjabi, or they came through some referral and they didn't want to go to another attorney. And if I had said no, they would have called my dad and I would have ended up with the case anyway. So I took a different approach to settling those cases. Before NPI, many of you will know this, you get a case and you start getting calls from the insurance adjuster. And most attorneys, if you have your own practice, you have 300-400 open files. You try to avoid those calls. And you're like, yes, still treating, we'll call you when done treating. Goodbye, have a nice day, bye. I took a different approach. I started talking to the insurance adjuster. Every time she called, I would say, how are you doing? Are you busy? Just chit chat. And things just changed. Things just changed how we interacted. So I would tell her, look, I'm busy over the next month. I have such and such thing going on. Call me in like 2 months or something. And another thing that you'll appreciate is that usually as a PI attorney, we were always asking, what's the insurance limit? What's the policy limit? We were always asking that. And we don't get that until there's a litigation filed somewhere. They're like, get out of here. You don't need to know this. So I threw that out there. I said, look, it would really help. What we're talking about. And she actually got her clients to sign the waiver and tell me the policy limits very early on. And we ended up settling the case for policy limits, 6 months out of there. If I had done these things the old way I used to do it, I would have had to file a lawsuit and then maybe settle in mediation. But I took the approach of a mediator, and I really listened to what the adjuster was trying to do, and kind of see it from her point of view as well, that to her, it's a file that she needs to close, she needs to move on. She has not only the insured that she has to answer to, she also has a supervisor or somebody. And at the same time, I also do what, as a mediator, I do. I'm like, we're not hiding anything. I want everybody to put everything on the table. Let's see where it's going to go. And that's what my clients did as well. And it worked. So if I hadn't gone through the mediation training, I wouldn't have handled it the way I did. And this skill, it really carries on, as Shirish and Judge Jones said, in your personal life as well. Yes, I cannot stop my kids from fighting. They still fight. There's nothing I can do about that. But it does, the active listening skill really comes in handy, whether you're sitting in a PTA meeting or with somebody. Every now and then they let me sit as a pro tem. They don't know yet, but they couldn't find anybody after Judge Jones left Contra Costa. Okay, you can sit on there. That skill comes in so handy, because when you're sitting there, the party is telling you everything, and you kind of like a first-year law student going, what's the issue? What's the issue? You're trying to issue spot. But then you put your mediator hat on and say, no, wait a minute. This person just really needs to talk today because this is their day in court. And you start really listening to what they're actually not saying. So this is a skill that even if, like I used to say to students that go to law school, if you're on the fence, go to law school, because that's a skill you can take with you in any career you pursue.
Absolutely.
Mediation training is the same thing. This is a skill that you can take with you in any field you get into. I'll be quiet now, so Mark can get back to other questions.
No, thank you for that. Judge Jones, Palvir said a few minutes ago, she sometimes deals with people when she's a mediator that are angry, but I can't imagine you run into that on the bench, do you?
Oh, boy. So I've got a couple things. Thank you, Palvir. You good transition. So my primary assignment right now, small claims and civil harassment. The civil harassment obviously is any restraining order, workplace violence, school violence, gun violence, and any restraining order against a non-blood, that you're not in a domestic relationship. So that's every kind of imaginable thing. Those things have all in the small claims and the civil have been exceedingly heightened because of the COVID. People have been, quarantining and close together and not getting out. And so there's been a big exacerbation. So you have people, gosh, so many, often I get lots of people rent rooms in their homes. And there's been an unimaginable increase of mental health. Probably, people go to work and they manage in unimaginable increase of domestic violence. And so what happens is you've got people who are coming in who've rented rooms to people who become acutely deteriorated mentally, people who are unemployed because of COVID, can't pay rent, people who are would used to maybe casually drink or did everything, staying home drinking a lot and doing a lot of controlled substances. And so you get lots of physical violence, both in the home and in the neighborhood. And so when they come to court, particularly now, in terms of the small claims, they are outraged. The landlords who can't evict, they're trying to get a restraining order from a bad tenant who's causing havoc. They're outraged because they're getting complaints from their other tenants about this one tenant who's out of control. We getting landlords who are hostile because they're not getting paid. So they're suing for small claims. They aren't getting their rent money because of the moratorium. And so, everything is compounded. You have a lot of, landlords, but then you just have regular people who just rented a second house. They can't pay the second house, so they're looking at foreclosure because the tenant isn't paying. So the pandemic has exacerbated, or the consequences of the pandemic have exacerbated the kind of how angry and out of control people are. Another thing you're getting is, I get restraining order requests from people, victims who've been stabbed. And the individual, because of COVID, may be in custody for a day or two, but they're released because they can't be held in the jail because of the COVID issues. Mm-hmm. So people are coming for restraining orders, terrified that this person's going to come back at them. So there's a high level of agitation. And so one of the things that has my mediation skills have helped is, one, not just in terms of seeing if, well, let me just say this. This is what I tell people a lot when they come like that. I say, you want your day in court, and you expect that the court is going to be able to navigate, let me back up. civil harassment restraining orders, I can't do I can't exclude anybody. So you want me to navigate a housing situation, whether it's in the same apartment, same house, same complex, and I can't give you what you want, which is to make someone move. The best I can do is give you a 3-yard stay away order that you have to navigate when you also use the common kitchen, the common bathrooms, and the common living rooms. Okay, so what I tell them is they think they're so agitated, they're so aggrieved, outraged, they want me to make an order against the person, but I tell them, the reality is, even if I issue a restraining order, by the time the law enforcement come, if they come, and this is no shade, it's just the reality, the incident for which has given rise to your violence or your threat or your harassment, those people are gone, you know? And the reality is, even if they are still there and the police make an arrest, the COVID circumstances are mandated, they cannot hold everybody very long at all in the jail. So I say to the parties, I said, the other part of that is my court calendar does not have enough space and time to really hear the history of all that's going on and all the nuances that you want. And I say for that reason, mediation is a much better tool for you. You can navigate the schedule of when everyone's going to go into the kitchen or when they're going to use the bathroom, so you can avoid that deteriorated, well, they're mentally ill, but you know, somebody who's just out of control or who's angry or hostile. You can navigate, you can create terms and conditions in a settlement agreement that maybe I necessarily can't under the law, but you can, as in terms of who uses the common driveway or what time of day you run your sprinklers, you know, in the neighborhood. And so I tell parties, one of the key things is I think mediation is also very powerful when we utilize it to acknowledge the power imbalances in the room. And when we say those kind of things to parties, they see that we see their situation, you know, and we assure them that this is going to be a safe facility. No one's going to scream at you. No one's going to talk over you. No one's going to bully you. It's a safe place where you can have someone help you come to agreements about the nuances that are going to help you live peaceably in your home or in your community, which is what everyone wants. So yeah, I have very highly agitated self-represented litigants, particularly because of the current circumstances of the pandemic.
Well, and what I'm hearing, Palvir, you share it, Judge Jones shared it, and I know from other contexts where Shirish has run into it, is there are avenues through the court, some of these court programs, community programs, to go in for anybody who's aspiring to mediation, again, short-term or long-term, to go get some experience. And if anybody, you know, listening in saying, well, I want to mediate, but I want to mediate in a certain area, the thing to keep in mind is if you're in those difficult situations, the day of mediations, court matters, dealing with sometimes some pretty emotional events, you're learning skills that are transferable. Somebody who deals with other types of cases, I could also say some of those become very, very heated as well. Theft of trade secret cases, business breakup cases. Yeah. My friends that are family law mediators used to give me a hard time going, oh, you don't know what it's like. We deal with the really hard stuff. You go, no. These people were business partners for 20 years and one of them just fired the other one. Or one side claims the other one stole trade secrets. Emotion exists everywhere. And so I think one of at least my takeaways is if you can get your foot in the door in any of these programs to do volunteer time, and you're dealing with these incendiary situations, you're learning not just skills to mediate, you're learning some skills as a human being you can take elsewhere, which is one of the themes.
And I think, Mark, we have I'm just going to go through a couple of questions we had. Sure. And I think our first question kind of segues into that. They want to know if the panelists have any specialize in certain legal matters, or will they take any matter? For example, will they take on a family law matter or refer it to someone with the family law background?
Shirish, you want to jump in?
Person mute. I would really hesitate before taking on a family law matter, just because this is not something I know much of. Although that being said, when I was practicing, I was assigned a family law matter by the partner or the firm that they needed an associate to go cover it. So I attended the San Mateo Superior Family Law Court and realized it's a different world in that court compared to every other one I've been in. So the short answer is yes, extend yourself, try new areas, but do it. It's just like in the practice of law. You have a duty of competence to these to the parties. So get some training, figure out how to do it. Yes, be open to it. But if you think you're not going to get up to speed, refer it out.
Yeah, and just building off of that, my 2 cents, anybody who's interested in getting in the mediation business, is it's sometimes easiest to build off of what you're the most familiar with as a springboard. And obviously, if you've worked a lot in an area of the law and you can mediate in that area, ideally you'll have a good experience. People who work with you have a good experience. And guess what? They'll come back about something else and broaden the requests that they use you for because they have confidence in you. That's how I became general counsel. I was an antitrust litigator, helped one client get rid of an antitrust case, and they came back about something else and something else and something else, and then invited me in. None of the other stuff was antitrust. So I think if you have some strengths that you can build off to to have that springboard effect, then exactly as Shirish said, if you have comfort extending yourself into some other area. I know I have done that over the years, and where I've got special requests, and then it's incumbent upon me to invest whatever amount of time I need to be comfortable, which is always grossly disproportionate to what you can bill for. But if you want to learn those other areas, you can do that. However, would you have the same kind of reaction?
Definitely, because you are going to have your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is going to be what you practiced. And I'm one of those that I always push to see, what else can I accomplish? What else can I do? Yes, it'll be scary if you are going out of your comfort zone, but do your homework, learn. And after doing that, if you think, no, you will be doing a disservice to the parties, then bow out. That means you have to check your ego at the door, because if your ego gets in the way and you think I can do it, then you'll be doing a disservice to the parties that are coming to you. That's my 2 cents. We have other 2 questions. One is a very quick one. I can just answer it. It says, do you have to have mediation training through, and I'm guessing it was for Congress of Neutrals in order to mediate for the court? For Congress of Neutrals, we require a 40-hour training. It can be done anywhere as long as it's 40-hour training. And then before you volunteer, yes, we want you to go through our MMP program, which is the mediation mentoring program, so that the transition is seamless, because we are there at the invitation of the court. We don't want to be disruptive. So that training really helps that people that we are sending into court, they know that this is a facilitated program. We are, doing things a little differently. So yes, to volunteer, you have to go through the MMP program, but not our 40-hour training program.
And just building off of that, the handout that hopefully everyone will have gotten by now, or will get afterwards, we list some of the California rules, which essentially delegate to the local courts to set standards for people that are participating in those programs. And we will, I think, in the June program, if we get to talk about that later on, we're hoping to even take a deeper dive into specific programs and what their requirements are. Some of them have more requirements than others in terms of any prior experience or being trained by the courts. I mentioned the Northern District of California. If you were admitted to the program, you have to go through their training program, regardless of what else you've done. So there's differences among just our local counties, and you can become familiar with that, at least starting by looking at the outline. However, the other, just speaking of that, one of the questions, I think, Sue Stott, please speak to the practicalities of starting a mediation practice. If you don't join JAMS, ADR, Judicate, others, and need to develop a practice starting with a website and appropriate facilities, what are your practical tips? Now, Judge Jones, I know you were doing mediation work before you went onto the bench, and what can you share? And then we can turn to Shirish about what you were doing in terms of getting the word out and saying, hey, I mediate.
So I did hang my mediation single. I was a sole practitioner, but litigation paid the bills. And so I struggled with, how do the litigation it takes so much of your time in terms of a practitioner. And so I struggled with having enough available time. I advertised people, I had an office, conference room set up, separate spaces, and people contacted me and I would conduct mediations at my office. But I never ended up doing a lot because my litigation practice and trial work just took up my time. And before my appointment, I was at the place where I was like, I really want to just focus on mediations, but the drop in salary, I did not know how to do it and take the hit. I had employees, I didn't know. So I don't have a good answer. Probably in retrospect, I think I would have tried to work sort of buddy up with somebody who has a mediation practice and start just trying. You just have to build the practice, and Shirish will talk more about that. But buddy up with somebody who already maybe had overflow, and I could take mediations and stuff like that. Because one of the things this is just a perspective I had. As a litigator, we're going to go refer to the ADR panel for mediator, the county ADR program. Or if I was looking for mediators, I always try to be intentional by looking for people who weren't on the regular list. But what I found is that the people whose names always come up are the ones who always get the work. And I thought, I know I'm as good as them. I'm better. But there's something in the profession, at least in my background for the last 15 years before I came on the bench, was probate, wills, and trusts. So is there something in the profession where people want to go to the known entities? And they're very skilled and very knowledgeable, but it seemed to rotate amongst a few people, and they became the trusted names. And so perhaps now maybe I would have tried to align myself with those known entities to see if I could get some of their overflow and sort of gain name recognition through them. So that's just the thought I have now.
No, that's great. Now, Shirish, obviously you're with JAMS now, but you were working on your own, both litigating and mediating before you joined. So I think the group would love to hear about what that was like for you in terms of building on your own.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'll just give a few. So in terms of the background there, I was a solo practitioner, and then I operating under the name Flashpoint Law, just a cool name I thought of. I don't know if it's cool, but it's a memorable name for me.
Better than Flash. Yeah.
Right.
Now, and then after I got trained in mediation, I then created another brand called Flashpoint Mediation. And I had separate business cards. I had separate websites. And when I went to market, I went to events where I thought, okay, with this organization, I'm going to be a lawyer, or this organization, I'm going to be a mediator. And the idea was over time to transition more and more to mediation and have people know me more for that. So that was the marketing differentiation that I did. Because I did not want to go to events and give 2 sets of business cards to people, because we already get too many business cards, and I don't want people to be confused as to what it is that I am doing. And then beyond that, there was the chicken and the egg problem that I saw in the chat, which is an absolutely real problem, which is I researched bar associations up and down the state, researched court programs to find out, okay, what does it take for me to join your program? Many of them were, you have to have 5 to 10. And then it's like, okay, how do I get the 5 to 10? So I contacted organization after organization and said, I'd like to be on your panel, happy to do it for free. There was a mediation provider, it's a community mediation provider that my wife and I had been supporting financially for years before I became a mediator. And I reached out to them and I said, I'd love to join your panel and get some mediations. And they were frank with me, and I appreciate that, which was they said, we have a list and it's about, say, 60 people long. Of those, only 10 people actually get any work. So if we add you to our list, it's kind of pointless. But if you'd like to join our board, we'd love that. And I was like, oh, no, I'm here to mediate, not do additional fundraising for the organization. Ultimately, what happened was I found organizations in Southern California. I live in Northern California. I found organizations in Southern California that needed help. And so I would fly down on my dime, rent conference room spaces on my dime, buy lunches to do pro bono mediations. So that way I could get 5 to 10.
Wow.
And I view that as I'm paying to train. And that was just the cost of doing business. And it was interesting when I was doing the research of what court programs were available. I saw that the Southern District of California, so the federal court down in San Diego, has a mediation program. So I reached out to them and said, I'd like to get on this panel. I called the clerk's office. They had no idea what I was talking about. It turns out that even though it was on the books, there just was no such program. And so it was eye-opening for me there. But at my peak, I was on 17 different panels throughout the state, federal and state panels. And by state, I mean county, bar association, also state level, like for example, DFEH. Of those though, maybe 3 to 5 were actually giving me work. The vast majority are just lists. And it does you very little good to get on those lists. I just use them as laddering effects where I could say, hey, I'm on these other 10 people's lists. Don't you want to add me to yours? And then at some point I started calling them going, if you're going to charge me to be on your list and you're not giving me any work, I don't know if there's value to me to be on that. So
that's great, Palvir. So your journey so far, I'd love to get similar perspective from what you've done and what's been working.
Shirish, I wish we had met earlier because I could have told you, come to Congress of Neutrals, we'll get you your 5 mediations and get you on the panel. Panel, yes, many counties it's just a list. You don't actually get cases. I get a couple of calls every now and then. And half the times I think they just want to know if it's a male or female with that name, Palvir Shoker. They're just trying to figure that out. As far as practical, to answer the question, it's easy to start, right? Nowadays with those executive offices, virtual offices, you can get an address and a mailbox and just get the conference room as needed. I hate to burst your bubble, but as a mediator, you're not going to quit your other job, which is being a litigator or being a therapist or whatever it is, the first day. If you can, then I will be calling you on the next panel and putting you on the panel as to how to do it.
That's right.
So I'm just telling you, kind of my journey as well. So on my private mediation side, it's marketing. It's just like when you started your law practice, early on, you went to every single happy hour that your local bar association put together. You joined every club that was out there. You had your cards with you. Any new person you met, you gave cards. Nowadays, you have to do a little bit more with the social media. We, at the ADR section, our annual dinner, we had a speaker who talked about how to do LinkedIn, how to do Instagram, how to do Facebook, how to do YouTube video. And after listening to her, I was like, oh my God, I need to hide my webpage because that's like from 1980s or something. So I'm really behind that. I'm not a good example, but the resources are there. So if you're starting out, join your local ADR section, meet other mediators. You are not going to do this on your own. Just like when I first started my practice, somebody gave me advice that I think was the best thing ever. They said, if you're going to start your office, make sure that your office is in a building where there are other attorneys. It just helps to have that group around you. They might not be practicing your type of law, but at least they will understand the language you're speaking. Same with the mediation. Be around other mediators, reach out to other mediators. We all have egos. We all like to talk about ourselves. Pick up the phone, call anybody that you think can help you, or even not help you, but at least guide you towards a resource that they might have or they might know of. And that's how you're going to start, becoming a mediator. Reach out to all the attorneys that you practiced with, all the opposing attorneys, even the ones that you didn't like so much. Just reach out and say, hey, remember me from such and such case? This is what I'm doing nowadays. And you never know, right? And that's what we're talking about here, that one of the things, and Mark, I think it's later on in our program, but I see Anne giving us a signal as well. Yeah. One of the things that I ask attorneys to make a commitment to is that make sure that when you get a list of mediators, if you're proposing a list of mediators, have a diverse list of mediators. And I'm not saying pick those mediators. I'm just saying have them on the list so that you are doing your bit in increasing diversity in our field. We have mediators that have done the training, but they just don't get cases. So we don't see them. I had a client recently who spoke a certain language and they wanted somebody with that background. I don't know anybody from that background. I'm sure there is someone, but I actually had to Google it. I mean, I found somebody through Google, but I didn't know personally. So that's one of the things that I'm asking attorneys that are here today. They might not want to practice as a mediator, but they want to contribute towards our goal today, is that if you are asking for a list or you're proposing a list, make sure that you have a diverse list that you're sending. Yeah. Judge Jones.
That's the rude part.
No, please.
I just want to say this. I just kind of scrolled and I know a couple of the Alameda County Day of Mediators, Ms. Malik and Mr. Kent are on. But I would say this, in anticipation, when in Alameda County, I understand it's been said to me, we have the strongest landlord-tenant moratorium. But you best believe when the moratorium lifts, there's going to be a tsunami of unlawful detainer cases. Conversely, as it's been shared with me in my little judge training, the legislation that was passed that said that if from March of 2020 through March 2021, if you cannot be evicted for not paying rent. And I've been advised, and I was told that the benefit that was given to the landlords was that the legislation was changing the jurisdictional limits on small claims, which means landlords starting March 1st of 2021 can sue for unlimited jurisdiction. Right now, the jurisdictional limit is 10,000 in small claims. But if they want to sue for unpaid rent during, you can't evict the person, but to sue for unpaid rent. So if someone was paying missed 10 months of rent at $2,000 a month, you can come in small claims court and and sue for $20,000. So we are expecting in Alameda County, well, it's going to happen all across the state. There's going to be a tsunami of small claims cases and a tsunami of unlawful detainer cases. And for those mediators that are on from Alameda County, we have the wonderful mediation coordinator there is Emerita Alvarado. Please contact. I know right now they have people who watch, and because in Alameda County, all our small claims, unlawful detainers, civil harassment, everything is remote. So you don't need any place to go. What's going to happen electronically, they're going to move you as the mediator and the parties into a chat room. You can stay in your living room and mediate a case in a private chat room. And so in terms of the physical structure, you don't even need that anymore. But I know for a fact that there's myself and 2 other judicial officers who handle this calendar every week. That's all we do. And every day we look for the notice about how many mediators are going to be available. And there are days we don't have mediators, or we need more than one, and we can't get more than one. I know there's an urgent need in Alameda County. So this would be a place, if you wanted to contact the day of court ADR program in Alameda County, get on. You can get cases, and they are having people observe and train. It may well be that the particular judges that handle the unlawful detainer, and I do small claims, will be looking for people to come in. We wouldn't go bypass the day of program, but we have excellent coordinators always trying to get us mediators, and we don't have enough mediators. So that be a place that people can look to in terms of getting experience.
Great.
And Mark, we have a question. It says, do you have to be an attorney to be a mediator? How do you draw the line between mediation and unauthorized practice of law? And I already see heads shaking.
So Shirish, you want to jump in?
Absolutely. Mediation is not a regulated industry in the state of California. And so the state does not say what qualifications you need to have in order to be a mediator. That said, organizations may set their restrictions. So the Alameda County Superior Court can say, you have to be a lawyer to mediate with us. But for you, every single person watching right now can say they are a mediator consistently with California law. I'm just saying California. There are some other states that could be different. So I give no legal advice.
So I'd like to just go back for a minute in terms of speaking of advice, things that made a difference, the practical issues. I agree with all the prior comments. For me, one of the great really helped me was I reached out when I was thinking about doing this privately, not just pro bono work, but privately. And I reached out to some very, very accomplished mediators, and I said, "Can I have coffee or breakfast with you?" And every person could not have been nicer in giving you the time. So one thing is, anybody if you reach out to them, I think you will get a receptive audience who's talk to you about what they've done, what they've learned, what they've observed, and we'll talk more about that mentoring in a minute. But one of the takeaways I got, I was so excited meeting with this very accomplished mediator, and I was so excited. I said, I think I have a list of 400 people that I can send notes to and say, I'm going to do this. And he said, Mark, you don't need 400 people, you need 4 people. Literally 4 people who you can go to and you say, I want to get into this. Will you help me? And it may be help in terms of they are lawyers that could hire you or people that could refer you to something, but literally find a handful of people, 4 at a minimum, maybe more is better, that you're willing to sit down with and just say candidly, so this is what I want to be doing. No one's going to, I think, be taken aback by that. They're expecting those kinds of conversations. And it's a little bit of an honor when people reach out to you and say, what can I do to help you? And to follow up, I think Palvir's earlier comment, to me, it was just that it was such an observation about places I thought work would come from. Sometimes it did, or maybe it didn't for a while. In other places, I didn't even think to ask, and people were reaching out, including people that were adverse counsel and other situations where you think that person would never want to work with me after that. And lo and behold, they do. So don't rule out anything in terms of your outreach is my messaging, and really think about broadly about who you can just have conversations with about help, which I think leads to the mentoring idea that we were kicking around. And Palvir, do you want to talk more about it?
Definitely. You knew there's going to be an ask and there's going to be something that we're going to leave you with. When we started talking about the idea of this program and what we need to do, one theme that kept coming up is that it really helps to have some sort of guidance. In my personal life, I always joke, I want a do-over of my professional life because I feel like I missed so many opportunities. I don't want that for the next generation. I don't want that for anybody that's thinking of switching careers or adding mediation as a career to their existing career. So our board kicked around the idea and everyone stepped up and they said, hey, if you do a program, I would be happy to be a mentor. And that could be as involved as somebody likes. It could be, just a phone call every quarter, every month, saying, how you doing? Everything okay? Or it could be as involved as just shadowing, that I have a mediation, you can come shadow me just to see how it is during a mediation. So I encourage everybody that's here. There are only two categories that everybody's going to fall under. Either you'll be a mentor or you'll be a mentee. We're not going to do it so formal that we're going to assign you labels. But if you're an experienced mediator here today and you would like to give back and you would like to inspire the next generation, please reach out to us and let us know that you would like to be a mentor. And if you hear a law student, a newer attorney, or an attorney that's been practicing for many years and want to switch careers, and you want to be paired up with somebody who has experience, and if you have questions like the type of questions we had today, and you would like to be placed on that list, again, please reach out to us so that I will try to make an Excel spreadsheet and make it all pretty, but we will match you with somebody so that you always have another person to call. Because none of us here, and I think Judge Jones mentioned it, Mark mentioned it, and Shirish as well, we all had somebody that kind of nudged us and somebody that, gave us advice at a point where we needed it. So if we can help you in that way and pair you up with somebody, we will be happy to do that. Because we talked a lot. Last year was all about talking. Last year was all about liking posts and posting on social media and saying we need to do this and how dare and all of that. That time is over. Now it's our time to do something and take some actions. And this was just a very, very, very small step. But I just want to see you guys take it further and see where we will be next year by this time. So we can look back and say, we put together these programs and these are the people that we were able to touch in a small way. So if you want to be included in that, as Mark likes to say, grassroots organization of mentor-mentee program, please reach out to us and we can pair you up with someone.
Yeah, and again, just the polite challenge back to our audience. I know there's some exceptional people on this list, and some of them that may look more like me and less diverse. To all of those folks, this is an opportunity for all of you to sign up. And again, nothing formal. It may be once a month, once a quarter, have a cup of coffee. When people actually get together again, do it by Zoom now. But you'd be amazed at your accumulated knowledge, things that work for you, things that didn't work for you, what you would do again, what you might do again, or it's all really, really valuable to share. Anne, are you checking in with us because we're around?
No, I was checking in because I know we have the poll about mentor-mentee, but it doesn't ask for any names. So I was gonna ask if I could send the three attorneys' email addresses, Mark, Shirish, and Palvir, with the attendance certificate so people could contact you if they're interested in being a mentor-mentee, or if you guys want to tell me later who wants to take charge of the mentees and who wants to take charge of the mentors, or however you'd like to do that, I'm happy to facilitate that. And so,
Yes.
because I don't think the poll will capture names today.
Actually, the poll was just to see if there's even an interest.
Oh.
If nobody's interested, then, you know, then our handy dandy list will just stay where it is right now. So that,
Why don't we put the poll question up, and then I was going to say after the poll question, maybe what I was going to propose is each of us can provide some last bit of advice to the group.
Mhm.
And then if there are any other open questions after that, we can turn to those with our remaining time.
I just want to make sure while they're doing the chat that you all scroll through the Q&A, make sure you've gotten all those questions answered.
I have been looking at it while we've been talking. Let me see.
Because I'll just delete them if you have. Fine.
Well, I'm not sure, Ann. I'm working off my laptop, which for some reason it's not scrolling through the Q&A.
most of the questions were answered. They had to do with Alameda County Mediation Program.
Okay.
And they
Right.
wanted information on that. And actually it was provided. Thank you. Celia, I think, provided it. And I think Diana asked, could Judge Jones repeat how to apply for the unlawful detainer program? You don't have to go through Alameda Superior Court.
Yeah, it's not a program yet. I'm just forecasting that there's going to be an onslaught, and we currently need mediators every session. I think we've calculated between the 3 judicial officers there, there's probably 15 sessions in Alameda County of small claims and civil harassment. So that's right now. And so when we have the tsunami hits, we're going to even need more people. So I would go through the ADR email for the ADR program. I think Mr. Kent or someone put it in the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
And can I just say this about backgrounds? One of the things about small claims, people think, oh, you're doing small claims. Okay, so I handle every kind of civil case that can be filed. Dental malpractice, medical malpractice, auto accidents, municipality law, civil engineering, dog bites, UDs, breach of contracts for everything, every kind of tort. But the only difference is that the statutory limit is $10,000. But the issues and the elements are all the same. The complexity is all the same. And so I say that for this reason. I love this assignment. I love the intellectual breadth of it. But what I find in mediation, if I utilize the skills, I don't have to know you're probably better at mediating if you don't know the law, because what happens as the lawyer part or the judge part, because I know the law, I'm sort of moving one way or another. And when I've mediated cases that, for instance, if another judge says, hey, can you take a case, and they send it over to me, I haven't read anything. You know, the parties start talking and I start writing. But if I use my mediation skills in terms of starting to understand the parties. Hi. Yes, I'm in a meeting. It's one of my fellow colleagues. If I start utilizing the mediation skill sets and try to identify the parties, read the body language, and ask them really what it is they're wanting, you know, and have other people acknowledge it, I'm moving them toward what they want, not what I understand about the law. So people who are school teachers, probation officers, therapists, school nurses, if you have any human skills, you're well equipped to do the role of a mediator. And sometimes it's better if they don't think you really know all the details, because they feel like they can really share with you and they can trust you with what you're going to try to help them craft in terms of agreement. You really have to attend to it because you don't have any preconceived notions. I've really got to understand what your issue is and let them hear what their issue is. So that's my last comments.
Well, that's great. Great comments by all. So I think that you all can see the poll results. So we have, it looks like 36 people that are interested in participating in some level as a mentee, and at least 10 people that have indicated here they're happy to volunteer to do some type of informal mentoring too. And I know, Palvir, you were already working up a list of people who had already responded to prior inquiries. So we're going to take this information and figure out sort of some next steps. Again, if you're thinking about offering to help as a mentor, we're keeping this very loose and very informal, so it shouldn't be burdensome for anybody. I'd like to just go ahead, Palvir.
I was just going to say that since, and thank you for doing the poll, since we do not have the emails on the poll, when Anne sends you an email with your certificate and with the outline again, it will have my email and Mark's email. Please let us know you're interested in the program, and then we will assign somebody. And if we don't have enough mentors, we'll just assign about 20 to Mark and go from there.
I got to work on my balloon animal making. Great. So
I apologize. Can I just ask this again? Because all my hearings are on the Blue Jeans remote platform. If you anyone can sign into my calendars and listen, and the first hour, that's usually how long it takes for people to, have enough bandwidth to get on and, connect and get in the right department. But probably if my calendar starts at 9, probably about 10 till or 10 o'clock, I'm assigning a case to mediation. And even, I would ask if you're on the platform. Well, I don't know. I'd have to check it. I'm getting ahead of myself. But again, the mediators are moving into a room with someone, a private chat room, if they felt like, gosh, I'm a student, I'm a lawyer, you know what I mean? Somebody like that who's like, do you mind if I sit in? And if the parties agree, you can just be moved into that chat room and just listen.
That's a great suggestion.
I'm being presumptuous, but as long as people understand, you can't talk, but you can listen, because people call into my court all the time and they can watch. They don't talk, they just watch.
Well, in that vein, I wanted to make sure I wanted to throw this, at least for me, kind of one of the more significant things I learned through some great training. Northern District program's great, other programs are great. But I will say personally, I think I learned as much by just going to as many mediations as I could as a litigator than as a client, and just watching. What's the old Yogi Berra line? You can notice a lot of things by just watching. It's really true in the mediation world. And watching judges, they're managing settlement conferences. And for me, I learned from just some brilliant people, and I would most of the time reach out to those people afterwards and say, can I just ask you a little bit more about how you did what you did? How did you get there? And I think the experience for most of us has been when people reach out to you and ask you that, normally you go, sure, I'm happy to talk to you about it. It's fun for us. It really is fun for us to do that. And then my only other comment, because I noticed among the people that listed what they're currently doing, a significant percentage are in private practice. It appears. For those people in particular, my strong advice, again, go to as many mediations as you can. If you're a younger lawyer or a brand new lawyer, please work with whoever's the more senior lawyer that you're working with and say, can I go along? And even if it's an issue about, well, we can't build a client for both of us, figure out a way to go anyway. Work on Saturday to make up for it. But you will learn more by watching. And I'm also a huge fan when younger lawyers show up with the older lawyers, the mediation. I want everybody engaged in the conversation. You're not here just to be the pot of plant. What are your thoughts to people? Because everybody has good ideas. So get in there one way or the other, including figuring out how to make it work around the, your other job responsibilities and the economics that, of course, drive a lot of us in private industry. That's my last kind of tidbit. But Palvir, Shirish, Judge Jones, any other kind of parting wisdom for this group?
I don't know about wisdom because I'm getting plenty of wisdom right here. I'm going overboard. But here's my 2 cents. If you're thinking about it, just take the leap. Just do the 40-hour training. If nothing else, you'll get your MCLE credits covered. Or you get to meet other people in your class that will end up being mediators. And then there you go. You know some mediators, because when I was practicing as, somebody who looks like this, walking into mediation with mostly white mediator and defense attorney, also older white male, and they would walk in and say, hey, I saw you at so-and-so's house, and how was this? And I always felt like, why am I here? Like, should I just pretend that I saw them somewhere just so that I could be in the conversation? Yeah. So this way, at least you'll get to see the next crop of mediators. So just take the leap. The other thing is I've heard, some attorneys say, oh, mediation, it's already so crowded. The field is so crowded. It's not. It's not. This field, like Judge Jones mentioned, right now with COVID, it's exploding. Right now by Zoom, people have gotten to experience another side of mediation that is convenient to do. And more people have gotten on this mediation path to use mediation as an advocate and all of that than they did previously. So this field is just getting started. So if you're thinking of it as a career, this has a lot of potential. And the last thing is that this program was just designed to kind of introduce you to the concept of mediation, to get you excited about mediation and get you thinking about mediation. So if we did that, we have done our job, but this was just the first session. So we do want to continue these sessions. In the next session, as I said before, we'll go into more details and nitty-gritties of it, how, when to do things. But in the meantime, send us your feedback so that we know how we can structure the next program. And if it's something mean, send it to Mark. But if it's something nice, feel free to send it to me and we'll incorporate it. Give us your feedback, because this program was for you guys. And we reached out to Alameda County Bar Association, their ADR section and women's section. And if there are other organizations that you think we should reach out to, please let me know. And I'll reach out to them, because no point creating something just in our neck of the woods, because we are doing it for everybody. And as a society, we have our work cut out for us. So if we are doing something here that can help someone, let's bring everybody in.
That's great.
I'll be quiet after that.
And by the way, not just Contra Costa, Alameda County. If you're, some folks are, Shirish is in San Francisco. You know anybody else you think the topic may be interested in? Don't feel it's geographically limited in any way. Parting comment, Shirish, more last other advice for these folks?
I really liked Palvir's comment about it's not a saturated space. I mean, you could use that same argument to say, why would you become a lawyer? There are so many lawyers in California. Law school should not be putting out any more lawyers. Like, we should close them up for a good 10 years. By then we might have enough openings, and then we'll open them up again. There are a lot of mediators, but there's always a need for good mediators who are willing to market. And that's how you will distinguish yourself. Some people say you distinguish yourself with how you are in the room. I say that's only part of it, because the vast majority of people will never see you in that room. And if that's what you're relying on is people that have been in a room with you, then it's going to be really slow going. You need to be comfortable selling your services if this is what you want to do for a living. But yeah, even if that's not your goal, if making mediation and arbitration your primary source of income is not your goal, that's fine. Just having the mediation skills will make you a better lawyer and just help in your personal lives. So I'd say at least get trained, shadow somebody, and try to get in the mediator's chair early and often.
Great, that's perfect. Judge Jones, parting comments, advice?
Yeah, my last thing I want to say is I want you all to be intentional about looking out for persons who don't look like you, both by race, age, gender, ethnicity, experience. It took someone, though my skill sets, I was already sort of geared for this, it took someone else who didn't look like me in any form or fashion to say you could do this. And it just seemed like a far reach. It seemed like out of my own world. And so Palvir, thanks what you said when people, and people do talk over you and they connect and they have these relationships. But for those of you who are mentors, be intentional about looking for people in your community, outside of your community, and invite them to the world of mediation. For those of you who don't want to mediate, and just mention to someone, say, hey, there's a program, they're looking for minority lawyers, persons, ethnicity, bilingual persons, cultural experience, and people with age. I saw age. I wanted to point an age, because also ideally with age comes people with a breadth of understanding about humanity. And that is a powerful tool in the mediation thing. You don't have to know everything, but if you know how to deal with people, that is a gift. So age ideally brings that to you. So I just want people to be intentional. We want to diversify the mediation field. It's significant for the parties we want to serve. If people look like them, then they feel like they can trust them. And that's just the bottom line. And it's the same thing why certain clients go to certain people. You look like me, I can trust you. You know what I mean? So it's the same is true for mediation. Those are my parting words. Be intentional about diversifying.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this has been a great conversation. Just a second, Palvir's comment. All feedback is welcome. This is really just a start of a conversation. I think we have a date nailed down in June. We haven't finalized the structure for that, but we may, at that program, take a deeper dive into the individual court programs possibly. We're hoping to have people from the different court programs there as well. But the idea is to roll forward and every several months find another topic that would be of interest to this group. So welcome your ideas, welcome your feedback about tonight, and we hope to see a lot of you when we do this again, right, Palvir?
Definitely. Now I have your emails, so you're not going to go anywhere.
Excellent. And I want to thank Ann Wolf and the entire Contra Costa Bar Association, Alameda County Bar Association. This was great to. And obviously our wonderful guest, Judge Jones, you're the only reason that we've got all this big number of turnout. Normally we get about 2 people, and that includes relatives that show up for these things. So thank you all, and look forward, as everybody does, to tomorrow, much needed day for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Yeah.